What's going on, everybody? I'm Tank, and today we're going to be talking about where your money is actually going when you buy bands' merchandise at their shows. Now, more specifically, we're talking about venue splits or merchandise fees, which is a fee that a band has to pay out after selling their merchandise at the venue that they just played at. Venue splits and merchandise fees are something that's been talked about for years in the touring music industry. But recently, due to the onstage actions of Australian metal band Alpha Wolf, people are talking about it everywhere, and it's actually made headlines, not just in music-related magazines and websites, but also on other outlets. So Alpha Wolf is currently on tour in North America with Era, Thornhill, and Invent Animate. And on July 30th, they did a show at the Rickshaw Theatre in Vancouver, Canada. And during Alpha Wolf's set, their singer goes on a pretty wild rant, clearly in frustration about the venue taking merchandise fees from all of the bands on the tour, not just them. Let's take a look at that really quick.
Before we go down here, I want to mention every band on this tour is selling merch over there. We're all trying to get the same shit done. It doesn't matter whose merch you buy, any bit of money you spend helps. Especially when these dirty fucking venues are taking 20% of it from the bands playing tonight. But apparently not. So if you got any money to spend, fuck the bar, spend it on a shirt.
So obviously, their singer, Lucky, not stoked about the whole merch fee situation. And I have my thoughts on this and this specific situation, but before I go into that stuff, there's actually more to this story that the band posted after that show.
Things got a bit weird at the end. The guy that promoted the show wanted his merch cut, which we never ever agree on merch cut. It's stupid and we hate it. But he wanted 20% of all our shit. You know, that's $5 for every single pair of shorts we sell. That's like $12 for every hoodie we sell. We give to some random guy who doesn't do any work, doesn't count in, doesn't count out, doesn't help us sell, doesn't do anything but takes free money. So apparently as that happened, he tried to get our sound cut. Like he tried to cut our set short because he wasn't happy with what was said. Which we don't see the big problem because, you know, we're just telling the fans where their money's going. They want to take a cut, but they don't want people to know about it. It's super, super shady. It sucks. It's dirty money, literal dirty money. So, fuck that motherfucker for trying to get our set cut short and trying to take our money. So obviously we still paid the merch cut. It's in the contracts. We've got to do it to play these venues. It sucks, but it's whatever. But the guy was a complete joke about it. Later on in the night, he saw Lockie walking past and he said out loud, "Oh, look at me. I'm putting your merch money in my wallet." You know, just as a total dig at Lockie.
Believe it or not, that clip actually answers a lot of questions for me and stuff that I'm going to bring up later in this video. And I don't know, man, the part about the promoter walking by them and like being like, "Look, I got your merch money," and being an asshole about it. Man, it's kind of hard to believe, but this band has no reason to make that up, man. If that really happened, I mean, fuck that promoter, dude. Like he's just trying to get easy money and he's being a dick about it. But since this video has been posted and it's been making the rounds on media outlets and stuff, a lot of people have been giving their opinions online. And I looked through Twitter and I saw a lot of people that seemed surprised that venues are taking merch cuts. People are saying it's greedy, it's scummy. But for me, I was like, man, I wonder if these people know how common this actually is, because it's a fairly common business practice in the touring music industry. Now, just for the record, I pretty much back everything they said on stage about merch fees. I might have said it a little differently, but you get the point. But these videos aren't about my opinions for the most part. This is about talking more about these specific situations that happen on tour. And earlier on in my roadie career, I was actually a merchandise manager for years for a lot of bands. I've done everything from small clubs to theaters and festivals and arenas. So for the rest of this video, I want to take that experience that I gained on the road and talk to you guys about these venue splits and merchandise fees and what they're used for, why they came up, and why they should probably change in the future. So to start off here, we're going to talk about what merchandise fees actually are. And you'll hear a lot of different terminology depending on who you're talking to in the music industry. You can hear venue split, venue cut, merch fee, merch cut, all those different terms, but it's the same thing. It's the percentage of money that the band has to give to the venue or the promoter after they've sold merch for their show. Now, before I go any further, I just want to stop and throw this out there. If there's any merchandise managers that are watching or any bands or anything like that, you should only be paying a merchandise fee off the net total of your merchandise sales, not the gross total. Now, the gross total is the actual amount of money that you've collected from selling your merchandise. But then you've got taxes that are going to come out of that you're going to have to pay. Sometimes you might have a seller's fee for somebody that sold merch. And then you've got to take out other fees in some situations, credit card fees, Square fees, stuff like that. After all that's taken out, that is your net total. That is what you're going to pay a merchandise fee on. It doesn't make sense to give somebody else money based on the credit card fees and Square fees and taxes that you're going to wind up paying on all of this. But there are some venues that insist they only work off gross totals, which is bullshit. That's not how this is done. That's a venue hoping that a merchandise manager or a band doesn't fully understand how they should be paying out. I've actually gotten into altercations at venues with people I've been settling with because when I run my numbers, they're like, no, you just give us the money off the gross. And I'm like, no, that's not how this works. So always pay off the net. If you have to pay a merchandise fee, make sure that you're not paying more than you have to. Now, there's a few different ways that merchandise fees can work at venues. Most commonly at club venues and stuff like that, a venue or a promoter just wants a flat percentage across the board from everything that you sold. T-shirts, hoodies, CDs, posters, doesn't matter. The most common percentage you're going to see is about 20%. But for a band that's touring in a van and trailer, that could be a lot of money, man. If a band sells $1,000 in merchandise that night, 200 of it is immediately going to somebody else. That's money that they could have been using for gas or food or anything like that. But there are often cases where the merchandise is split up into what we call soft goods and hard goods. Now, your soft goods are usually considered anything that you can wear. A hat, a shirt, a hoodie, sweatpants, shorts, you get the idea. Where hard goods are usually stuff that can't be worn. It's posters, vinyls, CDs, usually anything media like that. And if that's the case, the merch fee is a little different. The soft goods will usually have a higher fee, around 20% or so. And then the hard goods will have a lower fee, around 10% or something like that. And these are just, things that change while you're on the road. Every venue and every promoter is different. It all depends on what's been agreed upon beforehand. Now, a lot of people are probably wondering, why does this even exist in the first place? Why do bands have to give a percentage of their merchandise sales to a venue or a promoter? Because I know a lot of people would feel better knowing that 100% of their money went to the band that they were supporting. Now, this stuff has been going on for a very long time, and it usually originates from the bigger venues that actually have merch sellers for the bands. So in arenas, when I was touring, a lot of the stuff that I was doing was more accounting, shipping and receiving, making sure all the counts and everything were right. When you get to those bigger venues, they usually have merchandise teams there. So you set up everything with them and they take the merch. And then while the show is going on, they have multiple stands where they're selling for you. They've displayed everything. They've brought people in. They're physically selling everything. And at that point, my job would be to just keep in contact with them and make sure that they're stocked and they have everything they need. That is usually why there's a merchandise fee, because those people are going to take the percentage that they sold and pay all their help and make a little bit of money. And in that case, for me, I'm fine with it, because if a venue is going to do all of that work and, take care of my merchandise all night for the band, then yeah, they should be taken care of for that. But the problem with that is that over the years, a lot of smaller venues and promoters have adopted that merch fee without providing the actual help to the bands. A lot of these club shows require the band or their merchandise manager to physically set up their merch display and then have somebody there that's selling all night. That's why when you go to club shows, you often see the band or somebody from the band at their merch table. Most of the time, they're not just hanging out, they're actually physically selling the merch and working. I've been in these situations where the most somebody at a venue has done for me has been like, yeah, there's a table, go set up and I'll see you at the end of the night to collect the merch fee. They've done nothing all day. I've done all the work, or the band has done all the work in those situations, yet they still have to pay out. The problem here is that this has become so common that promoters and venues will now add this into the actual contract that the band's agent is signing for the show. So in this specific instance with Alpha Wolf, while I agree that taking 20% from them is really hurting them, that's money that they could use on the road, they unfortunately agreed to it, or their agent did, rather. So they don't really have an out from paying that. And, it sucks, as they said in that clip where you have to give your money to some random person at the end of the night that didn't do anything for you. So if a band wants to avoid these fees, really at this point, the only thing that they can do is get their agent to take merchandise fees out of their contracts. But as I said, this is so common that I don't know if a lot of venues would book these bands without a merchandise fee in there. And one of the worst things that's come out of this being so common is that bands are getting booked at these venues that don't have merchandise fees in their contract, but the venues are still going to them at the end of the night and trying to collect anyways. These venues are hoping that the bands are unaware and they think there's a merchandise fee and just pay them, even though it's not in the contract. And I've had situations like that on the road, man. I always made sure when I was working for bands that I got the show contract from our booking agent, so I knew that every venue I was going into had a merch fee, because a lot of them change night by night depending on where you're at and who booked it. So I've been in situations where I knew I didn't have a merch fee that night and somebody came up to me at the end of the night trying to collect, and I can just pull up that contract and be like, nope, sorry, I'm not giving you anything. And if there's a problem, you can contact our agent. And there's also been situations where they come up saying, hey, I'm here to collect and it's 25%. And I was like, well, my contract says 15%. And sometimes they get aggravated and say, well, that's not how we do it here. And things changed. And I was like, well, signed contract says 15%. Here's your 15%. If you have a problem with it, contact our agent. So for all of you bands and merchandise managers out there, always make sure that you have the contracts and know exactly what you need to pay to the venue, because sometimes they will try and get more than they're owed. But how do the venues really know what they're owed at the end of the night anyways? We've already covered the venues selling the merchandise for you, and in that specific instance, they're gonna know what the fee is gonna be because they sold it all night. So at the beginning of a day, you'll do a count-in with those venues. Well, you will literally physically lay out every single piece of merchandise you have. They will hand count it, you'll agree on numbers, and then at the end of the night, you'll count out, and whatever that difference is the money that was made. Now, in the situations in like arenas and stadiums and amphitheaters, the venue is liable for that money. So let's say we count out 1,000 pieces of merch. Count in 1,000 pieces of merch. At the end of the night, we have 500 left. That means we sold 500 pieces of merch. But if they don't have the money to cover that, like if somebody that was working there was doing bad math or they're short, they're still liable for that money. They're paying out the band whatever was on that sheet of paper. And a lot of the times it's pretty common that numbers are going to be off. If you're doing an arena tour with a band that's selling hundreds of thousands of dollars of merch, you're not going to get that number on the dot every single night. And then if we go back to the club venues and the theaters where they may not necessarily have somebody doing the merch for you, one of those situations where they just say, there's your table, they still may want to count you in. They'll have somebody from the venue come up and count all your merch with you, but then you go sell everything and you take care of everything. And at the end of the night, they'll count you out and then say, this is what you owe us based on the numbers that were from our count-ins and count-outs. There's also something called spot checking, where you will get your own numbers written up for the venue. They'll have somebody come up to you and they'll just randomly check a few piles of merchandise that you have just to make sure that your numbers are accurate. And then at the end of the night, they'll usually do the same thing. Sometimes if a venue knows you or the venue trusts you or somebody's just being lazy, they might just ask for your numbers. They'll just say, hey, just give me a sheet with your count-ins and count-outs. I trust you, whatever. And, pay us out at the end of the night. And then there's other situations where venues just don't do any of that. And literally some mystery person will show up at the end of the night and just say, hey, I'm from the venue. I'm here to collect my fee, which is always kind of laughable because it's like, I have to give this money to somebody that I haven't even seen all day, But these merchandise fees have always been a thing. And I don't see any of that changing until these bands and agents are just like, we're done with it. Unless you guys, the venues and promoters, want to do something for us and sell our merchandise and stuff like that. We're not paying out when we're not getting any help. We already have a merchandise manager on the road that's running it, or the band members are doing it themselves. It makes no sense to pay out. So as a former merchandise manager and somebody that supports a lot of bands, I feel for Alpha Wolf in this situation and the other bands they're touring with and every other band in the world that's in a van and trailer that is scraping by with their merchandise sales. But as you saw in their own clip, it was built into the contract. I mean, there's no way to get out of that. You can rant on stage, you can bitch about it, you can say this is unfair, they're taking our money. But if your agent signed off on that contract, there's just no way for you to get out of that. And I would just suggest to everybody and every agent out there to stop building it into these contracts. But it's become such a common thing that I don't really see promoters and venues giving up on this kind of thing anytime soon, which is unfortunate. So I guess if I had any final advice for any bands out there or merchandise managers that work for bands, know the situation, have your show contracts in hand, make sure that you're not paying out more than you need to, or that you're paying out when it's not in the contract. So hopefully that answered some questions that you may have had about merchandise fees and why they exist and why bands have to pay them. But with sit down and talk videos like this that I do, sometimes I leave some things out or I forget to talk more about something. So if there are additional questions that you have or there was something that came up that wasn't answered, feel free to drop a comment, man. I'm happy to talk to anybody about this, whether it's a band or another merch manager or just somebody that's casually viewing. I like talking about this kind of stuff, and I feel as though the best thing for bands and people in the music industry is to talk about stuff, be aware, be in the know of everything that's going on, and keep up to speed with other bands and people in the industry so you know when things change or you might find out you're doing something wrong, like paying a merchandise fee that is not in your contract. But to all of the returning viewers out there, thank you for always coming back to this channel and checking out my content. If this is your first time here, I'm starting to do a lot more videos like this where I talk about current events and then kind of relate it to my experience in the music industry. I also have gear talks and more industry talks and a lot of reaction videos. So if you want to keep up to speed with everything, feel free to click subscribe and hopefully I'll see you somewhere along the lines. I'm also on a ton of different social media. We've got a Discord server that I'm active on. I stream on Twitch from time to time. So if you want to join us on stuff like that, I'll throw links in the description of this video. My handle on everything social media is @TankTheTech. Wherever you are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other. Thank you so very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another industry video.